Hi everybody, this is Mark Gaynor, and this is part 2 of the class on how do we design a class for online students. In part 2, I'm going to give you an example from a class that I teach. This is an operations management class for healthcare. We're going to talk about how to design student assignments, what we should assign students to read. We want to tell a story. Once we've done this, we're going to look at a detailed syllabus. This is the roadmap to the class, and this is where I tell students to go when they want to know what to read next, what's due, and what we're going to cover next week. Then finally, we'll talk about creating slides and lectures so we can present this content to the students. So when I teach competencies, there are several competencies that I want to teach. I want my students to be able to understand and model systems, because systems are what we have in healthcare. And I teach this at an intermediate level. Now, the way that I assess this competency is I have several assignments. I have the final, homework number 2, and homework number 3. Now, I have another competency, and that is I want my students to be able to make decisions when there's uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty both in healthcare and in any industry for that matter. Now, what's different about this competency is that this competency is assessed by the final and homework 1. So it's a different competency, and I have different assignments that assess that. Now, there are different ways that I can present competencies. I just showed you a very simple way with a table, and this is a little bit more sophisticated. We'll have a nice banner. I think you can use either method. I think it depends on your audience. Now, this is the science and analysis competency, and this is very important for our students because we want our students to be able to take data and understand the problem. So I want to teach students to take raw data and show that there's a problem, to show that too many patients are falling. I want them to be able to quantifiably use this data to show to upper management that we have a problem, and when we fix the problem, that we've made a difference. Now, this is an example of a syllabus that I use for my students. And this is a 4-week class, and this is the first 2 weeks of the class plus the in-class session. Now, what I typically do is I have the topics, and then I have the readings, and for each reading I have a reference, and you can see I've got the reference numbers. So down below this syllabus is a description of each reading. And I also have what is assigned and what's due. So I know that for week 1 I have assigned homework 1, and it is due the following week. What I have found teaching executive students is they plan to do their work over the weekend, but sometimes they estimate how much work they have to do. And so if I have a due date of Monday morning, I have a lot of late assignments. I find when I have a due date of Monday evening, I give the students a little bit of leeway to finish up some work that they might not have had time to finish. Now, when I have assignments, and you saw that I have assignments on my syllabus, I want these assignments to be linked to the learning competencies, because remember, we're a competency-based program, so the learning objectives link to the competencies, and the assignments link also to these learning objectives and competencies. What I want for each assignment is a matrix that tells the student how I'm going to grade the assignment so that they have a roadmap. This can be an easy metric. For example, on some of my assignments where I have a student watch a video, I want them to convince me that they've seen or read the reading or the video, and they've thought about it. But I might have a more detailed metric too. For example, I might grade 10% on the writing style and 30% on the content, and so on. So these metrics can be of many different levels. I want to be creative. Assignments can be anything. They can be videos, they can be written, they can be oral. Here are some examples of some grading scales. Here's a standardized grading scale. I generally don't like a standardized grading scale because I feel like it doesn't give me flexibility to curve the class depending on how the class does. Let's talk a little bit about assignments. Number one, no busy work. The title, no busy work, should say it all. There's no point to it. Students don't get any value, and instructors don't get any value. When I give assignments, I want my assignments to show that the students know how to use what I'm teaching them. That's the idea of competency-based education. My students need to show me that they're competent in using the concepts that I've taught them. Now, typically for a class, I expect my students to spend between 10 and 20 hours per week for a 4-hour class. These are working students, and they have experience in the field. This time includes everything: reading, lectures, and assignments. In reality, I have students that probably spend 4 or 5 hours a week, and I have students that probably spend 25 or 30 hours a week. Sometimes our students have very different abilities, so the time is not always the important thing. It's what is the student getting out of the work. Now, reading is very important for an online class because a lot of the content that we're trying to provide to the student is in the form of reading. And I create a detailed reading list for each week, and you saw on the syllabus that I have the reading split up for each week, but I also have a list of each reading and what it talks about and why we're reading it. I like to post as much reading as possible because students don't like to buy books. And in general, you can post up to 10% of a book. There are a lot of good academic papers out there and white papers, and you should use these because they're free and they're very good. Now, I want you to look at an example down here. This is a bullet that doesn't display very good. It talks about the many good websites. And if you could see the display that I'm looking at, I can't even read it. So this is a good lesson, and the lesson is when you're making a presentation, when you can, try to give the presentation on the same equipment that you're going to use. Because when I look at this on my laptop, it looks very good. When I look at it in the video, it's very hard to read. So what you see on your laptop may not be what you see in the video. When I do slides and lectures, I like to have short lectures. I find that short lectures keep the attention of the students. I used to do lectures at 1 hour or even 2 hours, and the students got lost. Now my longest lecture is 15 to 20 minutes. If I have a lecture that goes 20 minutes, the next year I break it into 2 lectures. This fits the schedule of most working professionals, especially ones with families that don't have an hour or 2 or 3 to sit down and watch a video. They do have 5, 10, or 15 minutes where they can get a little bit of time and get some good content. So I believe that short videos are better for the student, and they're also better for the instructor because they're less work. A short video is very easy to redo. I don't need to worry about editing because if I have a 5-minute video, I'll just redo it. Now, one of the questions that I wrestle with is, should I include a picture of myself in the video? And in this production, this is a professional production, so sometimes I'm in the video and sometimes I'm not. A lot of times I do videos from my desk and I do have a headshot. And I do that because I believe that the student pays a little more attention, and I believe that it makes it a little bit more like an in-class experience. Because when I'm teaching in class, I have slides that are being presented, but I also am talking in front of the class. If a student finds my talking head distracting, they can always turn it off. So in conclusion, when I teach a course, any course, I need to tell a story. It needs to start at the beginning and it needs to have an ending, and then I need to have meat in the middle. I want to define what my students need to know, and I want to make sure that they can apply this knowledge. I want to create a syllabus that has all the information in one place so I can tell my students where to go. And if you noticed, in my syllabus, I have that schedule where I have each week, and that is really the main part where everything is defined. And then finally, I want the students to be able to use this information in their next life. When they graduate from my program, they're going to have a master's of health administration, and they're going to be out in the real world solving real problems. And I want them to have the competencies that they need to do this. And that ends this course, and thank you very much.